panicky about that one, because the Indian restaurant wants it, so they don't wanna.
Yeah, but Mantra's already in there.
Right.
So I talked to Vanny and I don't even own it anymore. I'm like, well, just give us something in writing saying you have no more interest in the property or the license.
Yes, yeah, whoever owns the BP, they wanna make sure they keep it.
thing we have is the approval of the minutes.
Move for approval of the minutes for April 1st, 2019, and April 16th and March 26th of 2019, excuse me.
Second.
Third.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Then we have Justin Paul Meyer.
This is second?
Justin Meyer.
I think this is his first one. We should count this.
It's the second
Mr.
one.
Well,
Oh,
Mr.
because we
Chair,
didn't know.
Yeah, if we had the last name wrong, I think it's acceptable that he didn't get the first one. I think we should count this as a second.
Okay,
Or as
well-
a first one.
We will contact him again.
Yeah.
The next thing we have is discussion items. I'm sorry, summons complaint. The first one is Vandy's Kitchen.
Mr. Chairman,
Here.
they gave me a call and I went over and visited them yesterday, and I thought they'd be here. I thought they all were gonna come. When Van was in there, this other guy came in their Indian kitchen, and he got everything proper. He got, and Ed's here to back that up, and basically had their inspections, and then that guy left. And then they got the notice that their license is gonna be taken away, and they called me and they said they'd really like that license, and we'll do whatever we have to do to make it right. And I think they were gonna be here tonight to say that. So me personally, I'd like to hold it. They have to reapply, because the person that has the license right now, they didn't apply for the license. So they have to come in, they have to reapply. They also are expressing extreme interest in what I believe is the Class A, where they can sell packaged goods out of there, so they're also interested in that. And I said, well, there's actually a discussion tonight about maybe releasing the quota, and there is a strong possibility they might be able to get one. But right now, they do want that license, because it is a restaurant attached to the convenience store. And they still want, it's only a beer wine license, and they'd like to come in and reapply for it. So I'm just gonna speak on their behalf. Like I said, I'm still waiting for them to walk in, but.
Okay,
And they are all current. All the inspections have been taken care of. They did get an actual occupancy permit, but the Indian restaurant never opened. And they do want to lease it back out, so soon.
and so they just want the license to lease it.
Correct. Correct. They actually are going to open it up, though. They are physically going to do it.
Open it.
They're not going to, the people that own the convenience store.
So not Vanny.
No, Vanny's gone.
Right,
Yeah.
okay, so that's,
He's been gone for, I think, 2 years.
that's the issue is that I'm seeing is that the place isn't operating, there's a new person in there, and so whoever has this license isn't the correct operator at that
Correct.
point. Okay,
Correct, and the owners would like to get access to it, the owners of the building.
okay, and so I think, who did you talk to, Steve?
Big Dash, the Vanny, this person.
You talked to Vanny?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
'cause-
because the matter was on that restaurant, the Vanny's,
Right.
not what's currently in there.
Correct.
It's the so I talked to Vignesh today, and he's gonna basically send me an email saying that he has no more interest in the
Okay.
property.
Okay,
The issue is the license for Vanny's was granted, never issued, and that's what the summons and complaint was on, not on the current restaurant operator.
correct. And so whoever is operating the current restaurant would have to apply, they're not gonna be affected by anything that's going on here as far as.
They're actually out too,
Okay,
and the people that actually own the building, it's a husband and a wife and a brother, and they own another BP in, I think New Berlin or Mosquitoes, I can't remember where. And they still want that license for that location, and they want to reopen, and they said they will do everything it takes to make it whole with inspections, et cetera.
the distinction is they want a license, not this license only goes to Vanny.
Yeah, technically, they want that license. They don't want, they want a license for their place. So
Right.
if this one, I guess, goes away, hopefully they can get it. And again, it's only a beer wine license. It's not
It's a class B, yeah.
yeah.
Do we have a quota on that? What's our quota on
I think we're out of those.
Beer,
that? Beer, wine,
we're at quota.
we're at quota right now. So we're saying,
Well, we won't be once Vanny's.
Right, we'd have one available.
Right.
so they'd have to come in and apply right away.
Correct. Yep, and I told them, I thought they were gonna come in today, literally.
Okay. So, but as far as the summons complaint here goes, we still can follow through on that.
he was appropriately served or properly served. The options the committee would have is either to rely on Steve's statement, he had made contact with Steve and said he's gonna surrender his license. That surrender, or the attempt to surrender would still be something the committee has to approve. Since the summons complaint had gone out, you don't have to approve a surrender. We can still go forward with the revocation process if you so choose. The only upside there would be, whoever owned Vandy's at the time can't apply for a new license if he's revoked for a year. If they're just giving up on it, which it sounds like they are, the committee could accept that.
How long have we been going after him?
2 years.
You know, we've been trying
He hasn't
to.
been in there for 2
So I don't feel anything we owe him. You know, I think we should just go forward with someone's complaint. How long is that gonna take?
The summons complaint is done. He was served today. You can revoke it today. A non-appearance at this hearing here is basically admitting the allegations. He was
Okay.
served.
Okay,
But he was served today,
No, he
He
was
would be
served
ex-
last week.
oh, okay, thank you.
Yeah. Made contact today.
okay.
Okay.
Does anybody else have anything? Does anyone have a motion?
So the motion would be to revoke the license? Is that correct?
To approve the summons and complaint?
Motion to revoke.
A motion to revoke, yeah. If that's what.
I don't have a motion to revoke on
Sorry.
here. I don't have a box to check it.
The
Come on.
summons and complaint has been filed.
Approve the summons
they're
and
admitting-
complaint and
yeah.
revoke the license.
They're admitting the allegations.
So, just, Mr. Chairman, just a reminder that
Yes.
he did call, verbally said that he's admitting, but we asked, between Nick and I, we asked him to provide written response, so he's gonna email me either tonight or tomorrow, is what he said, saying that he's got no interest. So I don't know if you wanna go through with the revocation process, or if you just wanna accept that and hold it until the next meeting. That's,
He was in here numerous times where he's saying, we were gonna open, yeah, we're gonna open,
Right.
we're gonna open, so it just, you know, I just think,
I will say
you went through the whole process of this, let's just continue it.
a decision to revoke could be appealed by him. If he wants to surrender, we allow that. There's nothing really to appeal there. It's up to you guys. It doesn't really matter. One way or
either
the
way,
other.
it's gone.
Okay, do I have a motion then?
Move to go with the summons complaint and revoke.
Second.
Is there any further discussion?
So, Mr. Chair,
Alderman Weigl.
just so I understand, the real difference is that if we go through the revocation, then this, what's his name?
Big Nash.
Vignesh can't apply for the same license anywhere in the city of West Dallas for a year.
Correct.
Right.
Otherwise, it's essentially the same thing, because he says he would surrender it anyway.
Just one other question now. Does the license go away tonight or after the council votes on it?
Council.
From city council, yeah. This is the recommendation
thought
from the
too.
committee, yeah.
Right,
So hypothetically, he could surrender between now and next Tuesday.
He could do that, and the people can come in and apply in between the
I'll
time.
let them know
Two
that.
Tuesdays from now, actually.
I don't think he could surrender
that
if we've
seems
already
soon.
moved to revoke. Basically, the decision for surrender or to allow him to surrender would have to be made tonight to allow him to do that. If we've moved to revoke, or if you've moved to revoke,
No,
then he can't surrender anymore.
Right.
But the whole council hasn't acted on it yet.
I guess the council could say we are allowing him to surrender it. I guess that's the alternative.
Put it on file, place it on file, and
Sure, on the next date, we place it on file and accept the surrender.
Okay,
he's got 2 weeks.
He's got 2 weeks to surrender it, and then we can just send it back to committee and not revoke it.
Yep.
okay, is there any further discussion?
And, Mr. Chairman, and those people, I'm gonna let them know, have 2 weeks to get in here to apply. However, there's still no guarantees.
Correct.
I mean, I get that.
There's a 15-day waiting period anyhow, so they can.
Okay.
Okay,
There's also something on the books right now in 901, I wanna say, that says any owner of a property, if they're not related to the operation of it, has a certain window of time to apply for
I
that
think like
license.
60 days or
Something
something.
like that.
yeah,
That's right, I forgot.
okay, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
Nick, do we have to do a findings and recommendation then?
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
thank you.
Are you Justin Paul Meyer?
Yes.
Want to come forward here? Okay. So we got it. This is a new application.
Yes.
And you're working with Walker Inn. You put down a couple of things on here, and a few other ones came back.
Yeah, I couldn't really remember 100% all of them. So I think I wrote on there eventually, like, upon when I see you guys, just fill me in with, I'll just go with.
Yeah. But your last one was dismissed, so the last one would be the 914 obstruction, technically, so. Anybody got any questions here?
Mr. Chair?
Alderman Wiley?
I'm reading the master report here, and it says that we had you in here a year and a half ago. And we denied your application then based upon an incomplete application and your record.
Yes, and
So then when you came in and applied this time around, you didn't try much harder to make a
I
complete
put
application.
down more than I had last time, and I also had put, if I had missed anything, I wasn't sure of everything. A lot of this was when I was still in high school, so a lot of this was still 10, 11 years ago.
Yeah, yeah, it says all unknown upon meeting.
Yeah, meeting with you guys, like all the rest of it, like you guys would have to like fill me in with, because it's hard to remember stuff from 10, 11, 12 years ago.
Can I interject?
No.
No.
Okay, so any further discussion?
We did try getting stuff.
I
from
said
police
no.
departments. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I've tried multiple times to get stuff from police departments, and they said I went on CCAP, looked up everything. If you go on CCAP, everything I had written down that's all they have on CCAP.
Okay, do I have a recommendation here? A motion? Everybody's excited.
And said I haven't really had any police contact. I haven't
I think that, in looking, obviously you put down the two worst ones, and, we're looking back, 5 years ago.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, or
Alderman Haas.
Alderman Weigel can go first. You're
Well, I was gonna say, the possession was 5 years ago. OWI was 5.5 years ago.
OWI.
6.5 years ago.
Yeah, OWI. was-
6.5 years. 6.5. Well, that's the conviction deal. And those are getting to be pretty far in the past. So how old were you in 2012?
21, 22? I'm 28. I just turned 28 March 13th, so.
Okay. Like I said, it just doesn't seem like you tried very hard to be more complete this time. But you're saying you did?
Yeah, I
You just
definitely
you don't have a record of a disorderly conduct guilty conviction. You don't have a record of an underage drinking conviction from 2009.
I would say most of it's all like misdemeanor, minor stuff.
Resisting in 2011, what happened in West Dallas. 2014, you have an obstruction conviction or guilty charge or whatever, and a possession of drug paraphernalia. That was 5 years ago. It's just not a very forthcoming application.
Alderman Haas.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, we have a individual who has one OWI, and the most recent issue was in 2017, which was dismissed. So we're certainly not counting that Columbia County domestic abuse, which was dismissed. You do have a criminal past, and I just said criminal. Many of them are ordinance violations that aren't charged criminally, so in fact, by definition, not criminal. Given the only issue is that of forthcomingness on the application, I'm going to move approval for this individual.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
No.
Motion carries. Now it goes to the council, and 2 Tuesdays from now,
Okay.
and the entire council has to vote on it.
Okay.
Appoint his license, so. Okay?
Mr. Chair, before he goes, is this your first part-time license?
Yes.
Okay, so.
I've been there for a few years now, and
You've been helping out when they're busy and all.
absolutely.
So, I want to thank Alderman May, because he wants me to give the speech.
He's the best at it.
We expect you to be a partner with the police when there's a problem.
Yes, absolutely.
We expect you to not serve people that are drunk. That's one of the things we're cracking down on, is when we see police reports where it says multiple individuals highly intoxicated. You know, it's your responsibility. You have a license now. It's like actually against the law for you to serve somebody that's drunk. Okay.
Absolutely.
Didn't have a license before, you will. You don't have your license yet. You will likely get your license, but you don't have a license until it's in your hand.
Yeah, I just got the as of now, I
Oh,
still
you
have
have
that
provisional?
provisional,
Okay,
yep.
okay, so, but, when there's a problem, if you think you should call 911, call 911.
If I have the thought, just do it.
If there's, you know
Absolutely.
what, I might need to call, I might need the police call. That's why we have trained professionals out there to come help you. You know, so, I guess I don't know what the policy is at the Walker Inn as far as drinking on the job. I
Smart, just be
hope
smart.
it's a smart policy,
Yeah.
for you and the employer, you
Yeah.
know, they're gonna figure that out. But, there may be an occasion where there's a compliance check where the police come in, or have someone go in acting, are they acting as their agent? Is that the right
They-
term?
In a confidential informant of some sort.
Right,
yeah.
where there might be like a 19 or a 20-year-old in there with no ID. That's a very expensive ticket, and typically, the boss is not gonna pay that.
Right.
And oftentimes, you might get fired over that, so
My
it's
job's to check, and I don't. and-
cheap and easy to card.
Absolutely.
Did I miss anything?
I think you got it.
Okay,
The license, you don't have the license till we
right.
vote on it.
Okay.
May
Yeah, but he's
7th.
got provision.
Yeah, I got the
He's
provision.
got provision.
Yeah, I think, yeah,
And
another
then,
month or
since you
so.
can't find it, here's the copy of the police
There,
report.
now
Okay,
you
thank
have,
you
now
very
you have
much.
your background.
Yeah, see, when I called them, and they said, we don't really have much, this is exactly what I was looking for.
Okay,
Thank you very much. Yep.
Thanks for coming in.
Okay, now item number 4, this is someone's complaint about Escobars.
I was contacted,
Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, I was contacted by the liquor license agent SVRE Escobar. She had stopped into the office, and then I talked to her on the phone and via email. They are no longer operating. I guess nothing was actually provided to them, but she did provide me an email that she is, quote unquote, admitting to all the allegations in the summons. Please abandon or relinquish, which she's talking about is surrendering here. The application involves a liquor license at Escobar's Kitchen LLC. So she's
Surrendering.
She's surrendering it. She's provided us the written notification at this point.
Okay, so we just place this on file?
She's admitting everything.
So moved.
Are you allowing her to surrender? I guess I would just ask for some
Well,
affirmative.
If she contacted you and talked to you and you got something in writing.
Sure.
Yeah, I think that's all we need.
Okay.
So we'll cross that off. Who made the motion to,
I move.
and second?
Oh, yeah.
Who seconded? Did anybody second it?
Second.
This is just a place on file. Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, then we come up, item number 5, someone's complaint, the New Asian Supermarket. Marty will say the agent's name,
No, you won't.
so,
It's Jow with an X.
Oh, sure it is.
Yeah.
whatever.
Mr. Chair, we're gonna have to try to seek some different type of service in this one. I don't think it's gonna be a problem. We just couldn't effectuate it this time. Our process server went there and talked to his family and was told he's in China right now for 2 months, and so we couldn't serve him. We should be able to, what I would ask is that we get this on the agenda for the next, whatever next meeting we have, and I'll have different service. We'll get accomplished that.
So if he's not around, you can't serve him, we can't take the license away at all.
We tried to serve the agent, we can try corporate service next on the location if they're still operational. We can publish as well, and so on the next day, I mean, we did all that, but I think to cross our Ts and dot our Is, we can go do corporate service first, unless, or rather than rely on publication.
So you want us just to hold this one?
Yes,
Okay,
for the next,
we shall do that then.
thank you.
Okay, item 6, discussion on repealing and creating liquor license quotas. Oh, he's already explained it to us somewhat. People had time to sit and mull it over.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I am here in case you have any questions on it or anything else you need. The ordinance that was drafted essentially accomplishes what I suggested several months ago, that would remove the local quota. So all that would remain is the state quota on the Class B liquor license. And it would be up to the council then to use its discretion on issuing new licenses, as I described. And I understand that is quite a big diversion from past practice. And I understand why there are still questions, maybe uncertainties around that. But I hope that with our office's guidance, myself and Nick are both available to answer questions on that. We'd be happy to help transition that to a time when the council really is able to utilize its discretion in new license applications.
Mr. Chair,
Chair, oh,
Hold on me.
can you remind me, what is our state statute limit?
I believe the state statute limit is 147, and we are at 130 right now. That would only be for Class B liquor, though. There is no state limit to Class B beer, and there's no state limit to the Class A's.
Okay.
But again, the limit is essentially set by the council on its own discretion. If you don't want any more liquor licenses or alcohol licenses in the city, you can simply reject every application that comes forward because of that reason alone. So it's,
Hold on, Barbara.
I'll just get, because nobody except maybe Mick is old enough to remember the reasoning behind the quotas. The state limit is 147, but back when West Dallas was known to have more bars per capita than any other city in Wisconsin, at that time, the committee and the council felt that we should put a self-imposed quota to cap it. And hopefully that would, as bars would either go out of business or somebody wanted to come into business, they would purchase one or the other properties that was maybe not doing well and stuff like that. And it was pretty successful in doing that. And as we closed, when we redeveloped over on 70th Street and we closed a lot of those taverns over there, those licenses just kind of went away, and we never reissued them. So that was always the purpose of the self-imposed quota. In something I just ran into in Watoma, Wisconsin, somebody was trying to open a bar. They're at their state quota, and it's $10,000 to get a license to go over the state imposed quota, and they have to pay that to the state, not to the city. But that's just a little bit of, for whatever it's worth. That always worked. I understand this new, that we've never had, I want to say this type of opinion coming from the attorney's office in the past, which makes it more refreshing to say that, we don't believe we want a tavern there for any particular reason, and, you can deny it. I still personally like the quota system to try to keep these licenses down to some type of a reasonable. I think now we're second or third per capita. Somebody came up and said it's somewhere up in Door County, Sister Bay or one of those towns up there have like just a bunch of licenses, and then I think La Crosse is up there also, and then us. So
Portage is.
Portage also has, okay. So it's one of those, it's one of those, do we still want to keep them in check? At the same time, we hear from development, and, a restaurant wants to come in, and there's no way they can come in because we don't have a license available. So it's refreshing not to have to worry about the quota and just say, yeah, we can do that if the council would agree on it. So I'm kind of like, right now, I'm just like, I like the old system, but I like the new refreshed opinion that we can deny anything we don't think that, would need to go in.
Dan?
But that's just the history.
It kind of was touched on, but I'm with Alderman Barzik too. I think it dilutes the value of the current licenses. Again, my opinion.
Did you have something, Steve? Oh, I thought.
Just one correction, the $10,000 does go to the municipality, not.
Oh, it does?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh,
Oh,
now you
thank
got my attention.
Yeah, let's go.
And we do, right, so just so you're aware, we do have reserve licenses sitting out there on top of the state quota. I don't remember 4 or 5 or so, or something like that.
What's a reserve
Yeah.
license?
When the state created the quota in 1997, there was a huge calculation that every municipality had to do, which set your quota for your regular licenses, and then there was whatever was left over or something was your reserve. So there were, every municipality had a few reserves over and above the quota, and then every time your municipality increases in population by 500, you get another reserve license.
So we have 152?
6.
I think it might be 6 reserve
150.
licenses.
As he just said at the time when the state passed the quota, which we should have only had 147 defined by population, we had 156 at that time, so those are like grandfathered.
Yeah. So about 9. I can verify the actual number, and it's a minimum of $10,000. It's not $10,000.
So back when there was 157, the council at that time, they felt in their wisdom that they should put the quota at the 130, and we should try to hit that number to try to reduce the number of establishments in the city of West Dallas. That's the history.
I did want to add, though, the city of West Dallas is very unique because we are below the state quota. Most municipalities are already at or near the state quota, so we do have a lot of wiggle room that other municipalities don't have.
Yeah, because isn't there something where we can give one of our license to another
The reserve
municipality?
licenses, we can sell them to another municipality, correct, within 2 miles.
The only fright that I have is the same thing that kind of happened when we went to the Class A's and we said, okay, let's go 10 more, just to have some other, and boom, they went like that. And we just gave them away. There was no judgment, there was no, okay, now it's on a development that we're gonna do it only on a $10 million, a substantial development that would come in that the license would be granted to. We just gave them away, and that kind of right there frightened me. I was like, oh my God, we're gonna do the same thing here. We're gonna get rid of the quota and we're just gonna give them away.
And if I may also, you and I are talking about the same thing, that letter that we all got in this council that nobody can find anymore. I would love to see that letter
I think it was
again.
an email, but
Well, no, it was handed to us. It was a policy decision that came out of development.
so that
And it was 7.5 million, I think, was
Was the-
the magic number.
All in one.
Mr. Chair. So this is an outgrowth of us having the business plan now, where a licensee essentially says, this is the kind of place I'm going to run, and they're gonna have a definition of restaurant or sports bar or tavern, and we have percentages of sales broken down by like alcohol and food in the business plan, and anybody that strays, we'll say substantially from their plan, then we'd have the ability to revoke that license from them?
This is the first step toward that. So this is the step that would essentially open up licenses that the council could again exercise at discretion. You're talking about placing conditions upon a license, and there would need to be an ordinance passed that would create possible conditions that the council could then impose upon a license in order to revoke it. Otherwise, the conditions you impose, if they're not in the code, or at least optionally listed in the code as conditions that you could place upon a new license, there wouldn't be an enforcement mechanism for those. So that's the trick, is this is the first step, but then the next step would be during the code revision process to say, do you want to limit by being a restaurant? Do you want to impose a condition upon this license that it must take a reduction in the number of people that it allows as occupancy in the property, or that it can, things like that, I guess. So other conditions that we'd have to come up with. So whatever the council thinks would be appropriate conditions, we would go over that and enact those conditions, and then you could choose to place them on licenses as you deem necessary.
And then that's gonna apply to the new licenses?
Correct.
And I'm just thinking, because filling out my renewal right now, right now I put in percentage alcohol, percentage food, and that number changes year to year, and it's very easy for me to 2 keys on my computer and out it spits. And so if a business evolves over time and becomes less of a restaurant and more of a bar, but it's the same business, I'm just wondering, and they've changed their business plan, because you fill out a new business plan every year with your new application. As that business plan evolves, I'm just wanna make sure somebody doesn't come in and say, I'm doing, fine dining, and then it moves down, it's kind of an upscale sports bar, and then it's, well, we'll just do food on the weekends, and next thing you know, it's a shot in a beer joint, or dance hall, or pool hall. And it evolved over 30 years that way. I'm just, is there a way to get a handle on that?
Yes, yes, by enacting that ordinance that would place conditions or parameters. So, for example, part of the law talks about a restaurant being defined as one that has at least 50% of the receipts being food sales. You could impose that condition, knowing full well that if it's gonna be between 50 and 60,
Close, we're not gonna be in
40%,
there going, you're off by 2%.
people are not, the odds of enforcing that against someone who's just barely there is low, but if someone removes their kitchen,
Yes.
then that's an enforceable condition.
And then Alderman Roque spoke to the idea that we're diluting the value of the liquor license. Well, the reality is, okay, I've been in the business going on 39 years. I always thought people who thought that the value of their license was their retirement plan were fools. You know, if you can't make money selling drinks in Wisconsin, you shouldn't be in the bar business. But yeah, we've seen a couple, I think, well, there was one on Lincoln where the guy just closed up and we took the license away because he was,
Oh, yeah, 58th and Lincoln.
yeah, because he was gonna sell all this stuff and he diddled around and we took the license away. So honestly, I don't think the liquor license has any value. You know, we've had a couple other, these little corner bars just close up. I think the economics of that business model has changed.
So to answer that question, Mr. Chair, getting the economics of it, an alcohol license has what's called instrumental value and only instrumental value. It's only good if you have one, but it in itself does not have any value because it's not transferable. Something that you can't sell to anyone cannot have any value. So its only value is to the person who possesses it, to the licensee. So I would agree with you in that the value of it is when you have it, but there's no point in it, anyone else having it, because no one's gonna have it.
We did have instances in the past where someone wanted to open, and I'm thinking of a Class A on Beecher Street, where they bought the Class A from 92nd and Lincoln and moved down to, is it 71st and Beecher? They didn't do very well with it, to say the least.
Well, they bought the business.
They bought the business and the license and now it's I'm pretty sure we moved a new license, there's a new license moving back into that 92nd and Lincoln.
On the 80th Street one,
Yeah, from 81st Street.
There are very limited circumstances where someone can legally transfer.
Then they buy a business and
They
they
buy
move
the business,
Or
not
they
the
own the
license,
business,
the business.
and they move the business to a different.
But we have to.
Even
okay
then,
it.
it
We
has to
still
be
okay,
approved.
yes, we still approve it.
Gary?
And Mr. Chairman, just to back up what you're saying is that I think today, especially, you know, a year ago, I think we had 4 licenses available.
Yeah.
Nobody was even coming to get them. They were just there and nobody was applying for them. So I think that valuation part has gone down. But back when we were strict, when we were above quota, I can remember that Zogs sold his business because they were ripping that down in the redevelopment plan to the cigar bar. And that's how they got theirs. They bought Zog's business and then transferred the license over there. Pick and Save at the time when they moved into on Greenfield Avenue, there was a liquor store across the street called Gonerings, and they bought Gonerings. They bought the beer depot, closed the beer depot down, and transferred the license over to Pick and Save. So it was that was occurring on a regular business. Pick and Save on National Avenue. They were over where Home Depot was right now. They did the same thing. They bought some little store and it was transferred. So I can remember all those, buying different ones. Today, I just don't think that that's going to happen anymore, like it did back then, because I think number one, it was a lot less expensive. Pick and Save was, had money. They don't have it now. So
And the
I just don't think that value's there like it was.
And the standard for a transfer like that is a new application standard. So the council can
Yeah.
exercise that same discretion in that transfer. So that's why the license itself has no more value than an application for a new license.
Site landscape and all that.
But one last thing. Also, I believe we should have those before we drop the quota, we should have the conditions.
Oh, yeah.
Have all that finished and say, okay, so here's our different parameters. This a restaurant one here, this is a sports bar, this is whatever, and have those all drawn out, and then decide to take the quota away. That'd be my opinion how it
Agreed.
should proceed. But
I agree. Does anybody else have anything here?
Just a quick
Alderman
comment or
Mann?
question. if the number of licenses a municipality gets is based on population, and we're one of the few that actually don't go up to the threshold, then we cannot possibly be the most per capita.
Yes.
I think it's it must be per mile or something like that. It has to have something with density. Maybe at one point we were the most.
We
but-
had it. I mean,
Yeah.
I have that information in one of my files.
Okay, I'd be curious to see it. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, I think it helps development by us taking away from this, instead of like we did before. I think we added just 6 license additional, and that all went. But I think this would be better, but I agree that all the conditions have to be set up first. And, I think we should move ahead with removing the quota. Now, I would like to just hold this until we get all the conditions down, you know, just so we know, just so we're happy with the conditions before we vote on this.
Agreed.
You know, because once we vote on this, anybody can come walking in, you know, so, correct?
That is true, but you could also deny them.
Right, not true. Well, it's easier when you deny them based on the
Quota.
conditions.
Oh, it's,
Well, the quota too.
As long as we're consistent.
Yeah.
yes, as long as you're consistent and you have a rational basis for your decision, but even then, if a new application comes in where circumstances change, you don't have to do the same thing you did last time, even if it's an application for the same location later on. You could say circumstances changed since we denied the last one. These are the circumstances that changed, we're gonna approve this one. It really just ensures you have a rational basis for your decision, and that's it.
Mr. Chair.
Hold on, mate.
You also mentioned though, but that by having that in the ordinances, it gives us more grounds to stand on if there comes a need to revoke though, right? So if we approved, would it be 17 licenses? You would, I think you had said it would help to have something in the ordinances to give the certain conditions that you can refer back to, correct?
If you want to place specific conditions upon a license for a specific licensee,
Right.
there has to be something in the code authorizing you to place that condition. And if that's the
Right.
case, you can revoke or take that person and impose a forfeiture for violating that condition. But you need to have that in the code to enforce that provision.
And I think that's what we're saying, right? We want to be able to have that ability to enforce, okay.
And,
Beforehand.
if anybody has any, suggestions or questions, you know, definitely call these guys so they know exactly what to write in there.
My last little comment again is that I'm just fearful that, you know, these 17 licenses that we're gonna have, you know, and I don't have the name of a particular operator, but there's some people out there strictly buy little bars so they can put in their 5 little machines, and really the revenue's coming off the machines, and this person's gonna come in and he's gonna buy 5 little spots, 6 little spots, and we're gonna have 6 more little corner bars sitting there that we never had before, and that was, our whole intent was to get rid of that and clean up the city, and we'll go backward. That's my fear.
So we could put a restraint on
Well, we can-
gaming and we could.
You can.
What he just says, we can just say,
You wouldn't need to.
Yeah,
You can, but we were gonna do that with the Class A's, and it never happened, and they just were given out. I mean, I'm fearful of what's going to happen.
but we could, go ahead.
In that circumstance, I mean, I think what Kayla's talking about is maybe we put a condition or get those ordinances on the books that the condition of this license is you won't put any gaming machines in or something along those lines. We could revoke if they do then. The other side of things is we can say no to every single one of those and say, we just don't want these corner bars there anymore. We don't have to grant
That's-
any
and
single
that-
one.
and that's why-
And
that-
we don't
I
need
don't have a
conditions
problem
for
with
it.
that, but.
That's what I said, you know,
Consistency,
we put a
right?
bar right in the middle of
That's
a
my
residential area, it's gonna stir
No.
everything up.
Yep.
You know, cause that's where most of these places are, right in the middle of a residential
And
area.
then maybe some great development comes in, and 1 week later we say, "Oh, actually, we want to put one there now because the circumstances have changed." You can do that based on what Kayla talked about before. It's just giving the committee more discretion over that. But you're not limited by. You just gotta have a rational basis.
Right.
That's really all it boils down to.
And what you just said was a rational basis. This is a residential area, we don't want a bar in the residential area. That's it, that's all it would take.
So I'd like to hold this, and then you're gonna work with we're gonna work the ordinance, which we're gonna basically use if we have to revoke. That's the basic
Only if you wanna
purpose.
put the.
Or
condition in
to
the first
deny
place.
deny issuing in the first place. I mean, it could be things like live music, dance floor. I'm just thinking of of things that might you'd want to restrict.
Pool
Location,
table, certain area, you might not want a pool table.
And so all those types of conditions are things that likely we could add to the ordinance, and then it wouldn't be generally applicable. It would be you would have to choose.
At this
We're-
location.
We're imposing, on this license, at this location, we're imposing this restriction.
Can I ask a quick one on that? Outside smoking areas, can you,
There are some state laws on smoking that would restrict the ability to legislate it, but I'm sure there is some room to work in there.
or maybe the location of that smoking area, so it's not in the back along the residential, you can't do that?
I gotta go look back at 101, 123, the state laws, because there is something about having a reasonable area that allows smoking
Okay.
and some restriction against the city from designating where it is, but I would look into that.
Those are generally taken care of through like development and zoning laws versus alcohol licensing laws.
But we were saying we're not gonna do,
Yeah,
No, I'm talking about like structure, like an outdoor beer garden, smoking
Mhm.
area, that kind of stuff. And we do have criteria for that, as special use permits.
is there anything else on this issue? Everybody in agreement with where we're headed?
Can we put a time frame on this? When these restriction, input
What's
to
the-
staff on the restrictions, the next 2 weeks? Things we wanna talk about, think about?
There's a big rush for it.
Well, I don't know, is there a reason to?
Do it for the next meeting, the next actual scheduled meeting.
Yeah.
That's a month.
You want,
If I'm-
just to clarify, you want an ordinance on the books in addition to this ordinance that would have conditions in the next 2 weeks, or you want, to talk to us? and close the door on
everyone
that?
get everything to you.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, no, not the ordinance necessarily, but, and reach out to your counterparts and the other alders that aren't on this committee about, on the topic.
Just conditions.
Yes, the kinds of things that we'd like to consider restricting at locations for, you know.
But you're saying we don't need that.
I'm saying you need to have in the books so that you
Right,
can
oh, right,
impose it
okay.
as a condition upon a
So you
license.
wanna think of every possibility that you might not want.
If you wanna put conditions
Right.
on a license, you don't have to, you can just say no, or you can just say yes, you can have this, but if you wanna say, the only thing we're gonna have here is a restaurant, and we'll give you a license if you agree to be a restaurant, and we say that we have a code and we have a codified that that's one of the conditions we can have. If they change it away from that, then we can revoke them for that. That's the only reason we would need that, is if we wanna put those
But
conditions
you
on.
put the option in the ordinances so you can use it if
So
you want.
can have conditions, right.
Okay. Is there anything further on this? Okay,
Thank you.
then we have item number
Can we go
7.
back to
Do we wanna
number
go
two?
back to the,
Sorry?
Can we go back to number 2, please?
We already
Actually,
voted.
number
I know,
three.
but for discussion, so the people came in that own the, and so they understand what's going on?
number 3?
Number 3, yeah. Sure. We can,
Okay.
do you just wanna explain it to them?
Which number?
It says the advantage.
Number 3, we're on.
Three. Oh, cause he said
Okay,
two.
so what has happened is Vanny owns that license, that liquor license. So, we've been dealing with him for 2 years, so it's actually gonna be revocated. He's actually going to surrender that license, correct? It's supposedly
If he
surrender, if he doesn't surrender it within,
For next
2
council
weeks,
meeting. Council
then it's
meeting,
gonna go to revocation. You have the opportunity to come back in and apply as early as tomorrow and apply for that license. And you also have, I think it's I'm not sure, 45, 60 day, there's a grace period being the owner of the building to be able to apply for the license, but my suggestion is apply for it as soon as possible. Under the ordinance.
As a liquor store.
And it's as
Because
simple as
they have
that.
that floor plan.
What the clerk's office says.
A full application. It has to be a full application.
Yeah.
So he'll have to submit a lot of stuff by tomorrow if he wants to.
So it's as simple as that. So I spoke in your behalf earlier.
If he doesn't.
And, so that's where it's at. So come in and apply for that license, fill out all
And
the
it's not approved for surrender
documentation.
until the council approves it.
So you're kind of,
There's a 15-day waiting period for
Pleasure.
application, so.
Okay. Okay. Okay, we go, item number 7?
Back to our regularly scheduled show.
Yeah, okay, discussion for the creation of special event permit. Now, we did talk about this. We have it here.
Chair, if you,
Yeah, go ahead. Joe.
You'll find a draft special events permit summary that was attached to the agenda. This is essentially something that was drafted by staff as, again, a way to present you with options on how to consolidate a few permits that tended to be very specific and maybe even overlap with each other. So one way to handle any time that city services are necessary to take care of some sort of event that's going to either cause a safety or health issue unless city services are aware it's happening and are able to prepare for it. So, parades, to large gatherings, to concerts, to whatever the case may be, if it's going to be a traffic issue or a safety issue or a health issue, based on the type of activity, a special event permit will be necessary. It's fairly common in other municipalities to just have a single special event permit that would handle any type of large-scale event that requires city services. So the way that we're approaching this is by presenting you with sort of a summary of what it might look like, with the idea of getting some feedback, so that either myself or Attorney Serwin can draft the ordinance for your consideration once there's a hard document in place that would be inserted into the code. This version is not formatted for the code. It's more just a summary of topics for you to read and consider. So I guess if there are a few general questions that we'd have just to help frame it. Otherwise, there's really a lot of discretion here. So if you have any comments or questions, I'm happy to answer those first.
Alderman May.
Specifically in terms of block parties and street events that are held in residential neighborhoods, I saw somewhere in here, I think it was 90 days to have to apply for something like that. Sometimes neighbors don't put that stuff together until like a week before. And I want to make sure we're very flexible for our residents to put on block parties. I did see in here the way you had it worded, it was still just a $25 fee flat for that block party, which is good. But again, I just want to make sure we're working well with our neighborhood associations and our blocks, their events.
That's the exact kind of feedback that we're looking for, because with that specificity allows us to make adjustments so that it can be consistent and enforceable, yet also flexible where there is a need or a desire to have that flexibility.
Okay. These, the fees that you do have listed in there, is that what we're charging now? Is that what we came up with?
Well, there are multiple permits right now out there, so I don't know if the fees were taken from those permits.
A lot of the fees that are listed there, as far as the supplies and equipment, we don't have any authority to charge those right now. So those are the recommendations based on information from the Public Works Committee. So we have various businesses that have requested us to buy or to use our equipment, and that has been going on for some year, where we've just been allowing them to do that.
Okay.
And this is formalizing the process and requiring a fee for it, so.
Okay, in there, it has the $100 application fee, which would contradict what you would want.
Oh,
$25.
there's
It was
a
a
separate
special-
part for the neighborhood.
I see, the next line.
My issue with that one was more the timeline. 90 days is too much for people to plan.
Mr. Chair?
Alderman Weigel.
I have a couple things that I highlighted here. Under definition, city destination venue, so that doesn't include streets? Property owned, leased, or controlled by the
Correct.
city and associated with a city facility. So the city destination venue does not include the city streets.
Mr. Chair. So right now, we've had inquiries about people wanting to use like Centennial Plaza and things like that. We have no ability to give them a permit to do that. So this would give that. It does not include the streets,
So
a
street
special
would-
event
Street would be a
does.
block, it's covered under the
Well,
block
no,
party side.
no, it's an event.
Yeah.
It's, the definition of an event is on indoor or outdoors held on public property or streets, nonprofit organization. It's, we're trying to cover a lot of different
No, I
things,
understand
so it's a little discombobulated, but when the ordinance is drafted, it'll probably be a little bit easier to read that. But that is why we have that destination venue in there, and we're trying to cultivate more events as we move forward with our tourism commission.
Farmers market, we want things to happen there. So we have some residential block parties, special events in which neighbors in a residential street wish to have are we gonna have something like a commercial block party?
That's the special
That's a
event,
special event,
essentially.
Okay. Special event means unique activity, that's the second graph on here. I guess the page numbers. Occurring for a limited or fixed duration and having an impact to public property. So is this gonna include things that happen like Greenfield or McCarty Park? Are those considered, are county parks considered in this application? Are we gonna, cause the county has their own special event permit for things that go on in county parks. We're not overlapping, we're leaving, we're just carving Greenfield and McCarty and River Parkway out of this?
That's what we'd like to know, I think.
I think that's a
Yeah.
question for us.
If there's an interest in requiring not only the county's permit, but a special event permit under certain circumstances, and I just need to know that, I can certainly look into that and determine what the ability is for the city to do so.
But I think that just, if we're using our barricades,
Yeah.
and everything, then they have to get a permit from us. If it's all county stuff, you know, we shouldn't get involved.
Well, it depends, unless the sheriffs are gonna be patrolling, and they're having county crews do the cleanup there as well. I mean, it depends if the city's gonna be involved. So we might have a large event at a county park that requires city services. I just don't wanna foreclose that ability right off the bat.
Yeah, I agree.
I got some more here. Street means entire width, boundary lines of every public right-of-way designed or maintained for vehicular traffic, so it does not include the sidewalk? When we talk about street in the sense of a special event, I think or is this saying that the sidewalk is included because it's included in the boundary lines?
So vehicular traffic does not mean necessarily motor vehicular,
Okay,
so
okay.
riding a bicycle on a sidewalk
Yeah.
would be vehicular traffic. I would say it
Which
includes
is against the
everything.
law in the downtown.
I think there's a state law allowing you to prohibit bicycling on sidewalks.
Marty, if you don't mind, on that same thread, if someone wants to coordinate some sort of walk fundraiser on neighborhood sidewalks, would they have to come in? They
Yeah,
need-
and just the sidewalks.
Would that,
Well, they'd be crossing streets.
The question would be, do you think that is something you would want to include in this type of legislation? If you would, if you'd want to include a walk like that, look into that and see how we could define it, but
a couple of years ago, we had, and again, Marty, I don't wanna take you
No,
off, but we did have someone who wanted to, they want JR Pups and stuff.
Oh,
Remember
yeah,
that? They wanted
do a
to.
dog walk.
That's right. They wanted to organize a dog walk around a neighborhood that would have required some extra police and things to be present.
if there's gonna be obstructing right-of-ways, that's really when it kicks in. Generally, streets, sidewalks should be just allowed, people should be allowed to travel those sidewalks normally. The only time you get involved is if there is any request to block off traffic or to
Well, I don't think they had any
provide
plans to
security.
do any of that. They were just gonna walk across streets, and we said, whoa, 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 we have to get the police involved in this. This is a safety issue.
Yes.
Then it trips and becomes a special event.
That would be more like a parade. It would
Mhm.
probably meet that definition depending.
So do we have to include that in the definition?
Other thing I have on the application, it's on your 90-day thing. I'm also thinking not just block parties, but I'm thinking, okay, the Brewers are hot, they're in the
Changed it to
playoffs,
60.
and a business might wanna have a special event that you couldn't plan 90 days earlier, cause you didn't know the Brewers were gonna be in the playoffs. I'd like to have some flexibility there, you know, whether there's a late application fee, you know, I'd like to be as cheap as possible for residential block parties for the neighborhood. But if someone's gonna come to and do business in our public streets, and they didn't know until 15 days ahead of time, and they really, really wanna do it, then we should have
I would call it,
Kale or Mick can correct me if I'm wrong, but this is legislation that you are adopting. You do still have the ability to waive part of your own legislation.
But you
for
know, as
certain-
people see something in writing and they're gonna read it and go, oh boy, you really like to have this party,
Yeah,
but we didn't apply 87 days ago or
The
whatever.
real intent behind the 90 days is these large planned events that we need to get the information from
Police
them, so we can
and
pass it
public
on to our
works,
own
yeah.
staff and get all the feedback, then get it to you.
Yeah.
So when you get these weird situations, they're few and far between, you can just simply make a waiver to the requirement of the 90 days.
Yeah.
That's, in my mind, that's an option, but Kale might have some other ideas too.
I would rather codify something like an expedited permit or something
Yes.
like that,
Yes.
just to make sure that there is a standard in place, but it would be more flexible, and that would allow the clerk to at least look at that and see if an expedite is authorized or possible for situations like that.
Under additional application requirements, it says for special events that include a street event or block party, written consent from representatives of at least 50% of the occupied lots. Does representative mean the property owner or tenants? And now I'm thinking of one guy owns an apartment building and there's 12 units in it, okay? What if nobody who lives there wants this event to happen, but the guy who owns it does? What is a representative?
That's
It's
the
with
exact-
whoever you
The
want it
exact
to be.
question,
Who we
the
wanna
exact
have.
question I'm asking
It's
of you.
something for us to think about,
Do you want to
yes.
compute it by individuals, by residents, by occupants,
Yeah.
By
by
dwelling,
by
tax,
dwelling, by dwelling units, by frontage of the street?
dwelling units, that's what I meant. That's the way I've been interpreting it for residential anyway.
Well, I'm thinking of like an apartment building on 59th Street across from Kegel's, okay? And do we need half of the tenants living there today? And even though we might be issuing a special event permit that's good for 7 months,
Right.
you know, and do we give the landlord more say in it than the tenants? I honestly, I think if we're talking about quality of life issues, I think the tenants would be more affected. But ideally, these things don't turn into problems, which would affect property values. And I guess it's of my mind, if events are affecting property values in a negative way, that we'd end that event would go away. I mean, I'm thinking
Interesting
River
question.
Splash. You know,
Well, you would think that the landlord would, in getting the letter, would ask his tenants.
well,
what they thought.
no.
But there's a lot of them that won't.
Tenants get letters from the landlord and,
Yeah. Round file.
yeah, so we're gonna put the onus on the applicant to get the written consent from 50, half plus one of the people on the affected block. Right? And we're okay with more than 50%? We don't wanna make it 60%? All things to think about.
Well, that makes sense in a residential district.
Yeah,
But I see what you're saying in a commercial district.
Just to clarify then, occupants as in number of occupants or per unit?
yes.
One representative from unit, so if there are multiple people in a unit
I don't
and
need my
disagree.
wife and I to both sign.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
That's, so
unit,
the goal is
What if the
basically,
husband and wife disagree?
right?
the goal is basically what
They
do you
can work
want
that out
to
on their
present?
own.
What do you want us to present to you
Yeah.
for an option, and then you can always make amendments at that time too, but we're hoping to get something that
A
can be.
representative from each unit,
Each-
each dwelling unit. Are they still call RDUs, residential dwelling unit? Yeah.
Each US postal address. Is that what you're talking about, right?
Again, all these are ways of doing it. We're trying to figure out what's the best one to present to you.
So somebody,
What do you do when half the houses on the block are vacant?
Yeah.
It says occupied.
yeah, it says occupied.
I suppose.
So if you want a event on, 66th Street between, Greenfield and National,
Yeah,
you gotta talk to hundreds of people.
yeah. Or even right here, on 75th, just north of 74th, just north of Greenfield. There's a
The senior
six-story
living.
apartment building, yeah.
Right, right.
Enforcement wise, I just question, I'm sorry, how do we tell what 51% is? Do we pull
And how do you
parcels?
tell when houses are vacant? So
No.
there are all
If
kinds of,
people really signed it.
the way that this might be more effective is essentially as a petition style. So if someone wants to have it, they can present a petition that says this many people agreed on this block. And then
Then we
without
can-
setting a hard limit, there's a possibility that the council could then consider block parties with some advance notice. Again, and just say the number that signatures you did obtain is good enough or not good enough, given the situation. That's gonna slow down the approval process if you want it to just be something the clerk can administratively do if the council has to weigh in. So, Like I said, this whole process has a lot of variables, and which is why, unfortunately, this is the best way to do it, is just to try to get some guidance from the committee, and then we'll put something together, and it'll get honed down and refined over time.
Hold on,
Right now, what we do on my block is someone will go around when we do our annual block party, and they'll wait till they get the 50 plus one of the addresses, and then we just have a thing where we make sure to notify everyone of the date. So we have a requirement that notification has to be given to all people in the affected area that it will be going on as well. Is that in here anywhere, notifying?
I don't know if it was something we discussed though, I know. But yeah, that would be another administrative input, duty that the committee could impose on staff.
So that, I mean, I think for residential, that makes sense.
It's always like we're home one day and their streets blocked.
Right,
They-
what's
they
going
don't know
on? How
what's
come
going
I
on
wasn't
here.
invited?
Mr. Chair,
Alderman Rowe.
how about a clear majority of the affected people? Does that make sense, or is that?
I guess we have to define who the affected people are. So if a single unit has 6 occupants and another unit has a single occupant, the affected people would be 7 or would it be 2? I mean, households, individuals, we don't know how many people live in each property, so it's gonna be very difficult to necessarily enforce it like that.
The households is a little bit easier. You
Households
can look
is
on
easier.
GIS, you can say, here's how many addresses. There's
Addresses
many
and-
people, if
addresses
a
and
husband and wife don't
Addresses is
agree,
easier.
they can take it up at home, that's,
Units would be easier to enforce than anything else.
I agree.
I got another one.
Alderman Weigel?
Neighborhood cleanups. If we had a neighborhood cleanup, and I'm thinking this would have to be like a citywide neighborhood cleanup with 150 people, it looks like it needs insurance.
City-sponsored events are
That
not
would be a city-sponsored,
include.
that would be a city-sponsored event.
Are you talking about like what the police?
Do?
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to see these kinds of things grow more and more.
And it says neighborhood cleanups, no fees are charged.
Right, no fee is charged, but there's still, if there was 150 people, or we wanted to have alcohol,
More people
or a
would show
road
up.
closure. You know, you get people to clean up.
All
Give it to
those would
'em
be good
after.
problems to have.
That'll be good.
Clean up a shot in a beer.
And
At one of our
I've had to
new
do these
taverns.
kinds of things for events in the county, and do we have an idea how much this insurance is gonna cost? I mean, typically, people just tack this on as a rider on some sort of policy they have already. But I'm just thinking, if somebody had to go out and just buy this insurance as a standalone, the certificate of insurance, does anybody have a ballpark on what that's gonna cost?
For a single day event, I anticipate it would be commensurate to the risks associated, so
Oh, yeah.
with alcohol service, size of it,
Yeah.
intensity of the event, but I have no idea what the actual number would be.
Be a lot.
Well, it could be. I mean, typically for me, it's like, cause I added on to my.
$2,000.
No, it's, I get it added onto my policy for, but I got a $2 million umbrella for $100, so. But if you had to just go out and buy one on the market, I don't know what you'd have to pay.
We have gotten, for the city in the past, we've got special event, insurance, and it's been like $250 or something, but.
Well, yeah, and just on that issue though, we're the city of West Allis, which is a municipal corporation versus a organization with very little in the way of assets. I think that's part of the actuarial assessment.
Okay,
Deep pocket.
Yeah.
no fees are charged for a special event conducted by the school district or other governmental agencies or organizations financially supported by such, and shall be exempt from the fees in this section.
That would include neighborhood
So like a PTA
associations.
group or the booster clubs, they're all kind of extensions of the school district. We wouldn't be charging them any fees either.
I think the idea behind that is some type of taxpayer would be paying. We're
Right,
just
right, it's, yeah, it's
moving-
a circular firing
yeah.
squad, I get it.
Circular.
So the,
Well, we special
I'm not
assess,
sure what that means.
we special assess the school district for road construction. It's still taxpayer money. It's not our taxpayers, correct?
yes.
Yeah.
And then issuance and denial, we have applicant would be denied if he has outstanding costs relating to a previous event permit, which I completely agree with, What about if they're not current on other taxes or fees with the city?
So,
Or,
That'd be only the person pulling the permit, you just get, okay, you pull it.
well, but or a loan with the
Organization.
city, or, I mean, the kinds of, you know, I'm thinking, in the second district and around Fair Park, we have this thing about you can't park your cars in the front lawn if you're not current on everything. Your water bill's gotta be paid and all that. I don't think it's too much to ask.
So when it comes to being current on debts with the city before you get a permit, the only thing I'd ask is if that's gonna be the policy, it applies to all permits and all licenses. There's a case from the eighties that is on this exact topic that says it's something that a municipality can do, but in order for it to have a rational basis, it would make sense to apply this to every
Everything.
single permit or license the city issues.
So that means everybody's current on their water bill when they get a dog license.
And only apply it to city debts, so it would only be for the city itself. So you couldn't, state taxes wouldn't matter, federal taxes
No.
wouldn't matter.
so if we gave a loan to a restaurant or other facility that owed us taxes, we'd have to be consistent and deny them any special events.
And also probably
any
pull their
license.
license.
And probably pull their license too.
Mhm.
Okay, so if that's not something we wanna do, I get it. And then I have,
You know, we didn't come
well,
up with a conclusion on
okay,
that.
well, it's something we're thinking about. We're not coming up with conclusions today, I don't think. I think we're just,
I'm gonna take what I've heard today, Nick and I are gonna work on drafting something for you, and then I think from there, we'll have to just work out the
He
provisions.
said Nick and I, that means Nick.
Yeah.
It'll be 95%.
Under my instruction.
multiple applicants for the same location at the same time. We're gonna do first come, first serve, or we're gonna give some discretion to,
If you want it to be administratively issued by the clerk, you have to have some way of prioritizing it, so it'd be
Right, so first come,
first
first served.
applied.
and then in a parade, looks like we don't let reenactors fire their guns. No person shall sell, give away, possess, or use along a parade route any device which is designed to make noise and is sufficiently loud to frighten or startle an animal in the parade.
Mr. Chair, that's taken right from the existing parade permit.
No, we have like reenactors stopping and firing and firing off some rounds. once in a
VFW,
while.
well, all the,
That's
if I
a
may,
city-
all the
City
veteran
parade.
parades and Memorial Day
That's a
parades,
separate
Yeah.
city parade.
they always, oh, that doesn't count?
We don't get
That
a,
wouldn't
we
be a
don't get a
special event.
parade
We don't get
permit.
it, we don't get a permit
Oh,
ourselves.
so even
So
the
they're
guys
not
that,
eligible,
Oh,
so they're not under that.
Okay, okay.
What, you have a problem with that?
I'll bring back a draft soon.
I saw the look on your face like.
We can't have city, we're gonna pay
I
ourselves.
think that was all I had.
Mr. Chair,
Hold on a minute.
I have a couple of questions. Political rallies, and, we've got an upcoming election with a convention downtown and 18-some candidates today.
Yeah.
20
Well, they got plenty
tomorrow,
of time, there'll be more.
50 by next week. There's a good chance something might want to be held around here that could require barricades, extra things. Are we then allowed to assess campaigns for our contribution?
Yes, and that's exactly why the ordinance would have to be specific enough so that it's being applied uniformly. That's the goal of avoiding any type of vague or non-specific terms within it and providing parameters. So yes, the goal would be that. It doesn't matter what the event is. The speech presented would not matter from the most favorable to least favorable type of speech, as long as the ordinance is drafted in a way that would treat them the same, there's no problem in enforcing it.
Okay. State fair.
The actual state fair grounds,
Well, we do a lot of
event.
traffic setup on the outside for the state fair. Would this apply?
I'd have to look into it because there is some sovereignty issues anytime you deal with the state or any state entity. So I'd have to look into that one.
Okay.
Yeah, will not apply to state fair.
Events on state fair grounds.
Yeah,
But this would be
That's
in
what
our
you're saying.
streets, outside the
Outside
state
the
fair.
grounds.
Okay.
We do already have a contract with them for that,
Okay.
so, I mean,
Okay.
But the contract's gonna expire at some time.
And then we can point to this and say, well, you know, if you weren't you,
then
this is
they'll
what we would
only
be
pay us
charging.
$100.
There's a whole chapter in the state fair though, so I'm sure there's something in there that is equitable.
Okay, and then you mentioned 150 people or more
Yeah,
on the right of way or public land would require
insurance.
insurance. So if there's a neighborhood cleanup throughout a neighborhood, and they bring 200 people, which would be amazing.
But so it's
hypothetically,
a city-sponsored event.
even if it's run by the neighborhood association, they're not
It's a-
participating.
Well, it depends how it's finally written,
Yeah.
but there's the part where it says a division or neighborhood cleanups, no fees are charged. You could certainly say no insurance is, I mean, this is,
What we want.
you could say that
It's sort
you
of like we're
don't
setting
need
the parameters, but we
Yes.
can always.
But are we with I mean, no, essentially if something bad happens, then it falls on the city's insurance, because it's a city's event then, right?
It would depend on how it's arranged,
Yeah.
who's doing the organization, who's doing the supervision, and what type of injury we're talking about.
We have volunteer insurance right now, and if we have more than 150 people, I need to up the number. So if we're gonna have that,
Okay.
please let me know.
But is the neighborhood association really affiliated with the city?
They have been
Some
supported
of
by
them.
the city
They're
anyway.
supported by the city,
Yeah.
but is it,
That's a
is
great
that, is that an
question.
offshoot of the city? Is it
They usually have
an
their
arm
own,
of
they
the
have their own
city?
charter,
By the city.
I mean, because we're going through that right now, and they have their own, you have your own charter, and you have
Our
your
own insurance,
leadership.
our own, yep.
So do you guys buy
But
insurance?
the city will
Own
help. So
tax
for
exempt
example,
number.
the city will help by doing printing and then we pay the city back for
But
the
do you,
printing.
so, do you guys buy insurance?
Oh, yeah. For officers and for
Yeah.
general, yep. There's a yearly, it's about $500 for a yearly policy.
Are you done?
I had one more.
Go ahead.
A few years back, before I was an alderman, there was a rally out
That's
here
what
in
I
the
was gonna go,
courtyard.
yeah.
And so now you've got one organization coming in to do their rally, and then you've got counter protesters coming and they want to host something as well. They're probably gonna have less than 90 days to apply and do all that. How is all that covered? All that crowd control? Who pays for it? The people sponsoring the original event, or the people petitioning to come and?
That's
Protest.
exactly the issue, is the people coming to protest might be their own special event.
Mhm.
The idea would be that whoever the original applicant is would designate a physical area that the event permit covers.
Mhm.
And so within that area, they'd be able to exclude others.
Mhm.
So whatever counter protest is gonna happen to something that has an exclusive area, would have to occur outside that area, meaning they might be forming an unlawful special event if someone's organizing that and putting that together. So without a permit there, they could be either ordered to disperse, there's all kinds of ways to address that type of issue.
Hmm.
But if they get their own permit, then it's just gonna be, costs divvied up as per the numbers for each person.
Police department's not gonna be happy with that. Like, get rid of these
Right.
people because they don't have a permit?
Yeah, who's doing the getting rid of?
That's exactly the discretion that the police department's entrusted with, is at one point in time, do you believe the crowd to be an unlawful assembly?
Yeah.
And that's left up to,
There's a state law on it, basically, if it's something that may cause damage to property or harm to persons, 3 or more persons, it's under chapter 947 of the statutes.
make sure the chief knows about us doing this. I'd like to have his opinion on this.
Yeah, we've,
'Cause cause we had a lot of law enforcement from around the county here to help us.
I think they use training funds for a lot of the costs. They were able to call it training and.
all the affected
training.
departments have been involved in this, and they would certainly probably look at the ordinance too.
Yeah.
So.
Any other questions? Comments? Okay, so, you have any questions of us?
We'll put together something that we can at least present, and then from there, we'll have to just take amendments for it and go from there.
So you want us to place this on file, just hold it?
Holding it's probably appropriate for now, I would think.
Well, there's 2 of them, so.
Oh, yes, sure.
Put them on file when.
So we're doing 7 and 8, basically.
Yes.
So we're gonna hold 7 and 8. Moving right along. Discussion, number 9, discussion relative to general guidelines and operators license, bartenders, sales clerks and everything.
This might be Steve's.
Is that Steve's? Okay.
That's pretty much mine. I just wanted to get this document that was posted on there. It's an informal, internal document for my office, and I kind of just wanted to go through the guidelines that, or explain to you that this is what I'm going to be using to review operators licenses, and what I decide gets to you for further review. Basically, if you had any questions, now, me, Kale, and Nick met on this today to kind of go over some tweaking, and they've agreed to modify this based on the discussion tonight and some other ideas that came up through the discussion. One thing that even came up tonight is the 5-year period. It's one thing I was gonna add on page 2, the following drug offenses may result in denial or revocation. We're gonna tweak that wording, but of the license within the last 5 years, and then the one below that, the types of offenses. I wanted to ask, is that historically what you've gone by? Is that what you want to currently go by?
You point where you're at.
Oh, page 2?
Halfway down.
Types of offenses?
Here?
Type of
Okay.
offenses?
It might have moved because I added some stuff on
Okay.
mine. Yeah, so basically I'm asking, is a 5-year period to consider any offenses within the last 5 years, anything beyond that 5 years, we don't consider? I'm asking you how you wanted, like I said, it was even brought up tonight with one of the licensees about the offenses were so old, do you consider those?
Mr. Chair?
Alderman Weigel.
So, I don't think 5 years is long enough. Because somebody could do a bunch of things, be in prison for 5 years. And then come out and get a bartending license, because we're not looking past 5 years. Right?
Yeah, so the idea here
I mean,
is,
not to say he didn't do his
I recall,
duty, yeah.
I recall a specific incident when I was in Green Bay in which someone had no record for the past 20 years, and that's because
Yeah.
they were in prison for the last 20 years. So, yes, that's a legit concern. Now, the question is, although it says may result in denial or revocation, what it really is, this is a standard that the clerk will use to determine whether something is put on the committee for individual
For us to look.
consideration or on
Yeah.
so whatever standard you set, make sure it's a standard that anyone who meets this standard would just simply be set on for the approval group
Yeah.
of licenses.
Gary?
Again, in the past, I think everybody, our rule of thumb was always 10. If you had a clean record for 10 years, that kind of went, I think you grew up. Now, again, we did have ones with prison terms, and we did always take that into account. Well, you were in prison for 15 years. Yeah, you would be clean. Those still might have been denied, and it was always a rule of thumb. It never was a set in stone.
Right.
Because just because it's 10 years ago, the guy might have 8 of them, not just 3. So if he, and then in this case, 5 years ago, it was 1. You had 1 5 years ago.
When you were 21 versus.
Right. At the time, and now you're 28, which there's a lot of growing up in
30,
that little curve. But in the past, the rule of thumb's always been 10. If you've been clean for 10 years, yeah,
Would define clean?
nothing.
Nothing at all?
Nothing.
Not even,
Not even a traffic violation. If you had traffic,
Oh.
that's a,
but that's changed now with the traffic violation.
but
Yeah.
it tripped,
Right,
it
bringing them in.
tripped it to be reviewed.
Right.
So coupled with the new law changes that basically reinforce Chapter 111, which is the Wisconsin Fair Employment Act, that's why I'm kind of creating these and making sure that you are understanding what licenses are getting to you as a body. And
So-
then what are just going on.
Can I clarify something real quick? You're gonna be, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're gonna be seeing all these licenses still, because
Yes.
it's still
Yes.
a function of the committee and the council to approve. It's just gonna be a matter of what goes on, kind of the whole mess of kind of consent, these 15 licenses are coming through versus somebody you're gonna be, it's gonna be singled out and saying, hey, here is something to consider or consider more in depth.
Thank you, Nick.
Yeah.
Yeah, but, yeah, and following up on what Nick's saying, we don't look at the ones that are in that consent, because we rely on the clerk's office to flag the ones that maybe we should have a discussion with.
Yeah.
And
This is just the
And in the
flagging.
past,
this is
is the
the
flagging
standard
list
for
we're looking
who's gonna get flagged.
right, and in the past, you've always entrusted the previous clerk, Monica, with that understanding. I'm new, so I want you to understand that this is the guidelines that I'm following.
Yeah,
I'm not looking for anything adopted tonight. This is just a document for me. However, we did talk about the last section of this would be some good ideas or good criteria for you when it comes to a actual denial basis. The last page and a bit.
And when we look at how our committee has acted historically, typically after having a discussion with the applicant, we do grant that license. I think that that discussion is valuable, and that the default should be to have that applicant come to us so we can have that opportunity to have that discussion. They understand what our concerns are as a committee, what our standards are as a municipality, and Alderman Weigel can give the speech.
Well, and we can see if they drive here or not.
If they drive here, yes, yes.
But, okay, you get one in, and the person has, nothing except 45 consistent driving record, driving after revocation, no OWIs, but for the past 5 years, they got 45 of these.
Seatbelt violations and speeding
And whatever,
tickets.
it just, they just sail through. They wouldn't come in front of the committee.
That is correct.
Any conviction that's considered has to substantially relate to the licensed activity, and an OAR, OAS is probably not gonna relate back to bartending.
Alderman Weigel. Or not Alderman Weigel, Alderman Shaplesky, that goes to what Kevin was saying. Alderman Haas was saying. We wanna
Yeah.
have this discussion with them. Look at what you've been doing. with
Yeah,
it.
you-
Why
you
should we
know.
trust you with this license?
So, Mr. Chairman, just to clarify, 'cause if you have like 5 driving after revocations, you're not showing irresponsibility to being able to hold a permit and truthfully operate that particular permit, which means I have a given driver's license, I'm now getting a bartender's license, I violated all my rights to my driver's license. How am I supposed to issue you a license to 10 bar when you can't handle a license to drive a car? I can't see how those are not intertwined.
The reality.
This is, we've had this argument.
You know, but I didn't think so.
Right.
Well, I can tell you right now, I don't know of any case law that distinguishes this. So it's a new law without any case law to guide. It's basically just an interpretation. So if that's the way you want to go, and you want to deny someone because of a licensed activity like that, again, the committee can vote any way it wants. The difference is going to be the activity of driving a car and the activity of tending bar are 2 different activities. So it depends really how a court interprets that law. I would say to shy away from using operating suspension, because the law is worded in a way where you can violate a lot of laws that don't substantially relate to a licensed activity, yet the statute comes out pretty strongly and says that person should not be discriminated against because of their convictions or the violations. Given the way the law is worded, I would be more hesitant than not to use something like operating of suspension and just say 1 license to another license.
So, okay, the person has 5 of those, and the committee says, we're gonna deny. And 2 weeks later, they come in with their attorney, and they say, we feel that, you made, okay, we'll give you your license.
If that's the way it works,
Okay.
if they're so kind to do so.
So, if the committee denies somebody and we indicate that your record substantially relates to the license activity, say we're talking about operating after suspensions, and I've argued, I'm gonna follow the direction of my fearless leader here, but I've argued to the committee in the past that I think we could at least make that argument. They would have that opportunity then to come back and show how they've been substantially rehabilitated. Maybe in that time they go get a license, maybe they pay all their citations, maybe whatever that's been jamming them up they take care of, and maybe that shows to the committee at that point there's been substantial rehabilitation and they get it. We have to afford people when we deny them for their record the chance to show that. I'm gonna follow Kale's lead on this one, but if we deny them for an OAR or an OAS, and they're not able to do that, they're gonna get a chance to come back and can show us some more information. Maybe we talk to them on the day of and say, hey, these are the kind of things we'd be looking for. If we're denying you, we should be consistent in that, but that might be an option as well.
Because even with OWIs now, if they show that they've paid their dues, we can't say no.
Yeah.
If they have 42 of them.
If they show competent rehabilitation.
Mr.
it
Chair,
makes them
that's,
have an
that's,
another
that's,
turn.
that's my question I have. On here, we have competent evidence of rehabilitation includes honorable discharge from the military. So, If you have 3 OWIs while you're in the military, and you're not in the brig or wherever, Leavenworth, and then you get discharged,
I think
I
that
guess
was
you wouldn't
actually
have an
part of the
honorable
law, wasn't
discharge
it?
then.
There are 4 or 5 standards in the law written into, that's one of them.
Yeah. I thought
That
that
says
was-
it's competent evidence of rehabilitation, and like I said,
So just because you're a vet,
I think not standing alone. I think
Anytime-
we would have to require additional evidence.
That,
it is really worded oddly, to be honest
I
with you.
think, Marty, what happens on that particular one, and I actually know someone that did this many years ago, they went in front of the judge and were about to get thrown in jail, and the attorney said he just signed up for the United States Air Force, and they said, case dismissed. Went into the
Gary,
Air
what branch
Force.
did you serve in? Are you talking about Gary Barzak?
how was it?
So his name, we'll call him Gary. Go ahead.
G. Barzak.
Yeah, Gary J. But no, he did, he went into the Air Force and then came out, you know, with an honorable discharge, and,
And then we gave him a bartending license.
no, we never did. No, I actually don't know whatever happened.
My take on the licensing, the way the law is written right now is that if somebody comes back with that, we shall, at that point, issue them the operator's license.
That's what it says.
And does the
shall.
discharge has to happen after the conviction? Or they were just they sometime in the past, they were
50 years
honorably
ago.
discharged from the military.
I think the intent and the way the law is written, it said, I think it would come afterwards.
Who wrote this?
Right.
So it's always been the opinion from the Department of Revenue that any violation has to substantially relate. Somewhere, someone with pull at the state got them to change law to specifically say that Chapter 111 applies. And they tweaked some stuff, and whatever the issue was, they had them include
That was
that.
in there.
So it's who you know at the state.
To
You can
be
get these
rehabil-
laws changed.
And to be rehabilitated through a discharge, I think Attorney Serwin's analysis is correct. It would have to have occurred
After
whatever
the
conviction
conviction.
It would
was.
make no sense otherwise.
Or,
to say
or after
rehabilitate.
after the incident at
Yeah.
least.
Right.
Correct.
And that's the newest part of the law change, is the rehabilitation part, which we might have to look at changing just the little process of how the licensees come in. But we have nothing to present at this point, just, we gotta talk about how to deal with the rehabilitation part in the hearing before you or whatever.
I suppose the league is working on this too, on some level.
They had a session on it,
Yeah.
and I've broached some holes, and there's not very many answers.
So are we gonna require someone with an excessive amount of driving?
We could instruct staff that we still wanna see that application.
Right.
Yeah.
And have the conversation
is-
with them, but we can't deny based on that.
Correct.
Whatever you're telling me, I'm gonna add to my
Or maybe we
application,
could
so
if
if
we-
you want,
I'm trying to make it clear.
Well,
Yeah.
I don't think it's clear yet.
Yeah.
I'm gonna listen to Keel,
No,
but I'm gonna say, I think
yes.
there's a distinction
don't mean
between
to-
speeding and parking and somebody who is operating after being revoked.
Agreed.
I think there's a distinction
Agreed.
between that.
Yeah.
People are bad drivers, sorry, people are bad at everything they do in
Yeah.
their job, there's very just bad everythings.
Right.
I'm talking about licensure, and I'm gonna follow Kale, and then
The
seeing
refusal
Your
to obey
trepidation
the
on his
law.
face, but right.
Yeah.
You're seeing the exact issue with this law right now playing out in front of you, in that there is no hard answer on that question. And reasonable minds will differ on that question. So it's really up to the committee's willingness to take on whatever risk there is there.
You're my boss, I'm
If
unreasonable.
no, it's, you're seeing it play out exactly. If it's the committee saying this is a person, because the record is so significant, we want to deny this person, it's worth the risk if they want to,
But we're talking, just have them in front of us.
Yes.
Because they come in front of us, doesn't mean necessarily we're gonna deny.
correct.
But we can say, you know, we'd like to deny you.
Because
or
one of you will be
whatever.
here to say, you know what, that's not enough to deny. That's enough for us to,
Well,
but, hey, Mr. Chair, if I could, I have this question, okay? There's not enough for us to deny, but if we wanna, but we don't, it's not everything's 5-0 on this committee. Sometimes it's 1-4 or 2-3 or, you know, whatever. I mean, I like split decisions on things that are close, cause it sends a message that this is how, that there's a mixed feeling about this. But the reality is, no one should be voting to deny based strictly on low-impact traffic site stuff. So that really should be a 5-0 to approve.
As long as it's approved, there's no cause of action against the city.
Okay. Yeah, he got his license.
So my part is minimizing
50% plus
risk.
one.
Where I was before, I was also the risk manager, so I'm always thinking, that's why I'm doing all this stuff. I wanna minimize the risk to the city simply by having it as a special item versus not as part of the list of the regular ones. Just by perception alone opens up that risk that you could possibly deny them. That's part of the reason I'm doing
You're
this.
thinking it's risky just for us to, just to have them in here sitting at the
Well,
table?
if you're segregating one person because of traffic violations, but not other people because they have, you know, a couple traffic violations, it's still traffic violations and they doesn't really substantially relate. There's just that perception of risk there and possible risk.
Someone has 4 and someone has 40, I mean, there's obviously a difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, but with, like I said before, with the law changes, someone had pull at the state to change the law to specify. So someone doesn't like that, traffic violations have anything to do with a nursing license. And they made a state law to say that. I don't think this was specifically targeted at alcohol licenses. I think it was other state licenses that they
Most
do.
laws.
See, and Mr. Chairman, and just to clarify, mine was
Wait,
never.
wait,
Oh.
where- Mike
Yeah,
Davis.
Mike,
Failure to appear, is that a reason for denial? If a person meets all this stuff, and we ask them to come before us, and they refuse to appear
Twice.
twice,
And we consistently deny based on that.
is that a reason to deny? A
Failure to
license?
appear in only that?
Mm-hmm.
It's not based on the record. I mean, I'm not gonna try to jump on you, but we're not based on
Well,
the record.
okay,
We have to-
there's
how
a
long do we have
risk.
to give people leeway?
There's one of the risks. So you have someone coming out because they had 40 seatbelt violations and traffic violations.
And they don't show up,
And they don't show up.
and so we deny it because they didn't show up at our request.
If it's a discretionary license, yes. But the operator's license is a mandatory license.
It's a shell, yeah.
So
So you're saying.
there's no requirement to appear before a committee. But if there's a basis to deny, for example, if they had a record that might substantially relate and they don't appear. you
So
can
the
certainly consider
non-appearance
that.
on itself is not enough.
Not for a shall issue. I don't know if I would, I'm not sure if there's any requirement for a person to show up to a committee meeting
What I would,
if it's a
Not-
shall issue license.
Oh, I see, you're saying with the,
But you,
just the driving things.
you
If
can
there's
make
an
the argument we
OWI
don't
on
have
there.
enough information because they didn't appear to tell us they've been rehabilitated.
But you're-
Could we make that argument?
But you're not relying upon their non-appearance, you're relying on the record. If you
Right,
re-
but you got a record and you see stuff and then they don't appear. You don't deny for not appearance, you deny because you haven't been able to get verification of their rehabilitation.
The record itself, correct.
This might actually be a moot point anyway, because with the law changes, we modified the application, so we're not even asking for traffic violations, and the police department isn't gonna
That's
be
something I
reporting
wanted to
that.
ask.
Yeah. Yeah, you got a copy of that new application.
Okay, a second.
That's all.
Gary?
okay, and my point was never, I don't think I've ever argued traffic violations ever, that when I sat on a committee, et cetera. But I did on driving after revocation, because I always felt that was a given license, and you're not following the rules of that license, how are you gonna follow the rules of this license? So, the guy had a speeding, and he had, didn't put his turn signal on, and he had this and this. I never, ever took that into consideration. But I always did take in the revocation part. That part I always looked at, that you can't handle this license, how can you handle that license? So, bring somebody in just because they had 10 speeding tickets, but if they
That
lost
doesn't
their
make
license, I might wanna know,
That makes sense.
that they're revocated, I wanna know, hey, what's going on? How are you getting to work? How'd you get here?
And again, that's why the law's written in a way where it just says substantially relate, is it's the council and the committee's job to determine what substantially relates. I can advise you, Attorney Servant could advise you. You ask 100 attorneys, you might get 50 different responses. So it's just gonna be up.
To 100.
Probably.
Say the same thing.
So,
Yeah, well, there's only two options, so we'll split down the middle, yes
I
or no.
suppose.
But the goal, though, at the end of the day, is the council's gotta have something that substantially relates, and if you point to a conviction and say it substantially relates, there's something to go on, and ultimately a court sometime is gonna decide that question.
well, if we use, after revocation, it just, I mean, cause to me, it does relate, 'cause as we've said many times to people, that's why you're here.
I can see both sides of that argument.
I'd be willing to make law on that.
That's the real question.
Yep.
So, I'm gonna go back to this application. Our application, we have this, and it's on this draft version of the new one, that's in the packet. In the space, provide a list of any and all criminal convictions, offenses, or arrests substantially related to the licensed activity. We can't agree what that means,
No,
right?
lawyers can't.
Lawyers can't. We're expecting people applying for a bartending job to read our minds. I would rather that we still ask for all of it, and we review it. Because we have this all the time. Oh, I only put down the stuff I thought that related. And we've had people say that when they put down their seatbelt tickets but left their OWI off.
I will say, can I,
Or,
if
or
I,
abuse of a person, which.
oh, Mr. Chair, may I respond to
For
that?
denial.
We have found a few applicants because most municipalities are switching to the new law, and those people who get multiple licenses throughout municipalities are filling out applications in one municipality. They come here and they don't include the stuff that they've included on the other one because no one else is asking for it anymore, so they're used to doing it that way. And then they get dinged here for
Not being truthful.
violate, or,
Well, that's-
yeah, omitted
that's my next
offenses.
question. Can we still deny based on an incomplete application? Is that a reason to
Yes,
deny?
that is.
For,
I would say not with this language here.
so for a shall issue, I mean, the hard part about it is I've always argued that if someone's, just like the driving issue, if someone would come before you and answer your questions in a dishonest manner, or at any point in time, your feelings only, you're being misleaded, whatever you brought the person before you before is probably enough of a justification to deny in the first place. That's my guess, that's my assumption there. And so if they're being dishonest, you could just simply say that they have not rehabilitated. And you can give them the option to come back and try to prove it later, but at this point in time, the recent evidence is showing that it has not happened.
I think I've brought this up before, but I think you're bringing up a good question here is if we're looking to, it's the same kind of question with if they don't show up. If we're looking just to jam people up with the application process, that might not be the appropriate way of looking at this.
I don't
I
think
guess
that's
I
what we're trying to
wonder
do. It
whether or
just
not
shows a
there's
certain-
utility even in asking them to list the convictions. If we're getting the information from the police department and we're relying on that information, what utility does it even have to
Right,
ask
why,
them?
why do we even ask them to put down? We're just checking their honesty or their memory.
Right, or how they analyze what substantially relates to.
Yeah.
I don't really understand. I've questioned that once or twice internally about what is the purpose of this, other than checking their veracity or their truthfulness with us. And we can probably check that by asking questions. All right, you got 5 OARs. What's going on with that? Explain, or whatever it might be.
The other communities have the same type of thing?
Well, actually, Rebecca found one, oddly enough, from Quantico that they revised after I left, and police chief did his revision, and they simply ask, have you violated this particular law? There's a whole list of questions. I thought, have we decided that we were gonna look into doing something like that? In that,
We don't have, like,
if
checkboxes?
you guys decide that these are the violations that we care about, we can then have checkboxes. Have you violated this?
How long have
So
we
that's
had
an
this-
option too.
How long have we had this particular application?
For a month?
This one in
The ones
particular,
that we've been using.
I don't see the point.
I've been here 19 years and we've had it that
I
long.
always remember the same one. where it
Me
said
too.
that. We just made the things bigger about.
Bolded,
Yeah.
bolded that part.
Have you ever been
To number
ticketed?
4.
Yeah.
So we could ask them, have you violated this particular question, and they just check that. Or we could just ask them, have you violated these offenses, and then just leave it up to us to find them?
I think Nick said a good point in the utility of asking
Why are
for
we
it.
asking?
And again, is it to check their veracity? Is it their memory?
Yeah.
Or, because if we're gonna pull the same information, I've asked the same question as Attorney Serwin has in the past as well. So it's really, if the council thinks that's something that is necessary for an application, to stay on there, but
So the
I
only
think the
thing,
state still actually
the only thing
does include it in their standard license application.
I'm concerned about is I do have that certification. So rather than asking them the question, we could put, I certify that I have not done it. If so, or change that part of it rather than asking.
We can work that out
Yeah.
internally. That's the direction.
But how many times have we said to someone, you lied on here, well, where they say no,
Yes.
And then all of a sudden they get this huge record.
Then we deny based on an incomplete application.
And some of those are that reason.
And maybe that's why we, instead of delineating between, tell us about these types of convictions, tell us your encounters with police, however we wanna word it. Tell us, I think it should be either all or nothing, and I'm not, you guys can decide, but either tell us everything you think you have and we'll double check it and then we'll ask you about it, or don't tell us anything because what do we care what you have to say anyways, we're gonna check it ourselves. I don't know if there's a middle road that is functional.
I agree with
I
that.
think it's been working fine, the way it has. I don't see any reason why we should change it. You know,
But if
Like
he
that-
leaves
like-
off if they leave off their non-relevant speeding and parking, and we deny him based on that.
Are they being dishonest, or they just don't think it's relevant?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's why, I think the way it is right now is badly written. Like I said, we can't agree with
Our
what's.
current one?
Well, are we using this one now?
Yes.
This is the current one we're using now. We're using this one right now. This short version. Call it the short version?
Sure.
Because we're asking the applicant to decide what substantially relates, and again, we can't.
Right.
Yeah, right, we either ask for nothing or everything. And I'm almost to the point of asking for nothing. Because we're gonna find out anyways, hopefully. Well, we've had a couple people put down things that we didn't find.
Right. I was just gonna mention.
They're from other states in
Yeah,
particular,
sure.
that's what we're.
Yeah, so now we're just gonna get criminals from outside Wisconsin getting part-time licenses.
Mr. Chair, he applied for that one before
Yeah, that's why.
we went to this.
Yeah.
Oh,
So it was kind of like right in the transition.
so this is what we've been using for years.
For years, but this one was the one we switched to recently.
This one looks nicer.
It was changed based on the new laws.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no.
So.
And
Logo.
Yeah,
we can
that too.
deny a license if it has outstanding unpaid fee, tax, judgment, or assessment due to the city of West Allis.
There's an ordinance on the books right now, 1.08,
So you're behind on your property taxes, you could have done license.
depending on the time of the year.
Active warrant, I understand.
Lawyers.
I'm telling you.
And how old, right? It's a 5-year-old tax.
There's a settlement period which the county pays for all the city debt for
Well,
related
it
to
could
taxes.
be your water bill.
Water bill would be, at any point you have to pay the water bill before you get the license, yes.
We checking that?
So,
Yeah.
No,
No. For operators licenses, we don't.
we don't check water bills or tax
See if they owe.
payments
Yeah.
for operators.
Well, and operators actually, because it's a shell issue, might be exempt from that. I don't know. I'd have to look in that one.
Yeah, you're right. We don't.
Well, it's on here though. You know?
Yeah, I was gonna mention.
Oh.
I'm having some difficulty deciding which of these things are things that we have to do and which ones are your suggestions. Which of these things are from the state and which,
Yeah.
Oh.
so for example, I read typical offenses may substantially relate to a licensed activity, crimes against vulnerable parties or populations. So if someone is recklessly driving down the highway and putting other people in danger, I don't know if it's considered a crime. It's definitely
page 2.
illegal, but
Page 2,
on page 2. So I,
right in the middle.
to your point, I'm having difficulty understanding which of this is yours and which
List
is
Nick
this
came
is.
up with.
If I may, so on one of the last meetings, when we were talking about having Kale here, there was a suggestion we should also have some guidelines that maybe we should consider if we're gonna be getting rid of the quota. These guidelines are kind of a product of that. They are based on the law, but the goal of this is to kind of create a discussion, and I don't want this, I'm gonna talk about this in a little bit, but this isn't something that should be on the committee. You guys have discretion on what you wanna do. This is something that's gonna be an internal document for the clerk's office. I think what I'm hearing is that we want it narrowly tailored so that less filters through, less gets caught by the clerk's office and says, get on the consent agenda, and more comes to the committee to have discretion on, I think is what I'm hearing. But this document was created as a filter for the clerk's office to get things onto the consent agenda. If you guys don't want, if the consensus is we don't want some of this on there, then we'll change it. It's based all in the law though, every single part of it. Even in parts where I think there is a discrepancy in the law or an opening in the law, I've identified that
and that's something I would like some clarification on today at some point, but this is based in law or based in what other people are doing. The law does say things that substantially relate, or at least there's other municipalities that are using violent crimes, drug abuse, or drug crimes, crimes against vulnerable parties or populations. That's things that we could consider, if people are, that we could consider as substantially relating. If I'm a bartender serving somebody that's drunk and I've got a crime where I've had a financial crime against an elderly lady or something like that, somebody that's a vulnerable population, maybe that's something we would want to consider as being substantially related. At least we can make the argument there. I'm not saying it does or doesn't.
Credit
Any of
card
this been
fraud.
tested in court?
No.
Right.
So you say other municipalities are
Identity
using
theft.
it, and other municipalities may be pointing to ours, it's like, well, the West Dallas is doing it.
We don't have something like this on the books yet. This is the first time this
Yeah.
is being published out there, and I'm gonna proactively tell the committee that I am asking that you affirmatively reject this as something that you guys are gonna be ruled by, because I don't want anybody to eventually pull up this agenda and say, this is what you have to pass because I fit this. I'm asking that you actually proactively reject this as a policy and direct us to work on a document like this for Steve to use.
Mr. Chair. I got one more I'd like you to add, identity theft. Offenses may be substantially related to licensing activity. Yeah, they're
Checking someone's
taking-
IDs, substantially related to bartending?
Credit card number.
Credit card-
cards.
credit card theft?
Credit card skimming, yeah, card skimming.
Oh, that would consider under just general theft.
Theft,
You'd consider
yeah.
that,
Yeah.
okay.
The misappropriation, I would say.
So effectively, this is gonna be the net that catches or doesn't catch something. If it hits something on here, it's coming to you guys. If it doesn't hit something on here, it's gonna get on the consent agenda. And so we wanna make this, I guess, create this in a way that a lot of things would get to you guys. Only the really simple stuff, no problems, would get passed through.
And we could tweak this over time if we
Absolutely.
find 6 months down the road, we have not, whatever, however we're drawing the line. We're
you
we're
want
setting
something,
our steel
right.
point on what we wanna see.
Mr. Chair, how much this is advice for us?
I think that's how I
Should be-
read.
Because some of it feels like you're trying to tell us we should do something, and some of it feels like
I would
this is
add,
what you're gonna go. I'm reading like the bottom of page 2 and into the
See,
next
none of this
page.
is advice for
I
us.
feel like this is advice.
so,
Bottom of
Page
page 2 and the
3.
last one is advice, but not, that wasn't meant, the
Right.
first part of that was meant for this discussion.
I'll say, my creation of this document was, pursuant to a discussion, an internal discussion of whether this committee wants to have guidelines on it. So maybe at the inception of this, or the creation of this, it might have been advice for the committee or the council. I think we've decided to step back from that, because I don't wanna have something that limits you guys when we can make a reasonable argument. Because the only thing that can limit you guys is somebody comes in here and says, well, you said if I have it's been 5 years and I have 3 OWIs, that it's gonna be fine per your policy, when it might be not fine. You know, it's only gonna hurt.
And I think that's Mr. Chair, that's the difference between policy and a guideline. So I think the first page and a half of this is a guideline for
Absolutely.
you, and the rest of it, instead of being policy, it might be good to separate it out as a separate document and say, again, this is just general guidance, not a policy, and create 2 separate because like I say, when I read this,
When we first came
it's
up with this,
confusing me
yeah.
a little bit as to what
This
I
was-
can and can't do and what you aren't. gonna
This
do.
was built off of someone else's, and we modified it, Nick, and then we had a discussion about that today, and I brought that
Okay.
very thing up. So I think at some point, should you ever come to a revocation or rehabilitation hearing, that would be a document you would use.
Yep.
So, is the consensus we just place this on file?
Yeah.
And then, you have enough,
Yeah, that's okay.
You guys have enough input?
you got enough
I
guidelines
think
for
so, yeah.
where we're going?
The one
Just
only-
10 years, or 5 years, or 7.5.
10,
All right,
yeah.
all right.
Depending on their address for the last 10 years. Anything that's like a Green Bay or Waupun, then we just push it.
Oh, that way. A PO box in Green Bay or Waupun. yeah.
Okay,
Or
Yes.
Tachita. Or
One
Kenzie
more-
or Tachita.
Cheetah.
Hopefully very, very brief. There is a gap in the law that talks about drug convictions. The way it's written, it says we can revoke, suspend, or refuse to renew a license. It doesn't say we can deny a license. So the language,
No, jeez.
it is, I brought it up with the league. They said, well, I guess go with the intent of the law.
Yeah.
You either want to go with the intent of the law, or we're going to go with the way the law is written. one way we can grant a license and then just move for revocation right away.
Yeah,
Does
right,
that make
right.
sense?
That's
Um,
absurd.
Or,
Yeah.
or we go with the route that they just left out deny in the outset. Whatever way, I can argue either way. I got no problem arguing either way. I just want to know if we're having this be a filter for Steve or the clerk's office, which way do you want to see that go?
Include denial, I would think.
I would suggest pretend, that's not the
They-
word, but.
Somebody accidentally whited out.
Interpret.
Interpret, thank you.
Interpret the intent of the law.
Interpret that, deny.
Is
would
there a
be in
reason they
there.
would have allowed it to be issued and then require it to be denied or non-renewed?
For all effective purposes, it looks to be an oversight. Now, the way it's worded is that if it's a manufacturer distribution of drugs, then it is certainly by definition not discrimination, and therefore you can deny, you can non-renew, revoke, or suspend. So it's just one provision that gives you a guarantee you're not discriminating under these circumstances. It doesn't exclusively say, though, that the act of distribution or manufacture of drugs does not substantially relate. Does that make sense? So they're saying in one circumstance you can non-renew, revoke, or suspend, and here's what you can point to. But the general theory of it being substantially related is still something we can point to deny an original license application. So it's worded poorly, it's confusing, I think it was an accident, but it's not, all is not lost. You could still include that as part of the filter to bring it to the committee and deny it because you deem it to be substantially related, despite the fact that you're not gonna point to that provision of the law as the reason as to why you're denying. Can't imagine a more difficult way to explain that.
Yeah.
Did I have a motion to place this on file?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
do you want any revisions to the application as it is right now?
We'll pitch something.
Well, we'll,
I kinda
based on the discussion tonight,
go
we'll talk.
back to the old one.
Yeah.
We'll all talk.
If you just, you know, because
Yeah,
if we,
I-
if,
The substantially relates, asking the applicant to determine what substantially relates, I think that's
That's always been the gray area of that part.
why we ask for everything.
yeah,
Put it all down.
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Yes, it's the consider part, that's what I'm scared about.
hold on a minute.
I was gonna mention before, when you ask them to list things, it might also help the police differentiate, do I have the right person when I'm going back
Oh,
and looking
yeah.
at the records? So it might be helpful to keep some.
We have had that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Somebody, no, I don't have that. And they go, well, yes, you do. Here's your record. I'm
Bunch of
telling you, I
times.
don't have that.
Right.
And it was somebody else.
And the police put right on there.
Was
This
that
may
other
not be
Gary
the right
Barnes
Times
person.
we've had.
Is that other
the
Gary
other
Barnes
Gary
after the
Barnes.
same date of birth?
I've had
There's other GB.
Martin Guerrero in my last place apply, and he had
Okay.
Motion to adjourn.
Mr. Chair,
records, but it
before we
wasn't
adjourn,
'cause there's so many
I would like to
records.
congratulate Dan Korolewski on being our new interim health commissioner, and Dan's here tonight. Thanks for coming to our meeting.
Congratulations.
That's all.
I thought he owned a Walker Inn.
That's nice.
No longer.
Okay, do I have a motion there?
Need a motion?
So moved.
Oh, yeah, second.
Any further discussion? Anybody want to stay here?
Okay. Aye.